al-Qaeda in Lebanon. Omar Bakri is a hardline cleric stripped of his UK citizenship, but he denies any involvement in the uprising in Syria and claims the latest video by al-Qaeda leader Ayman Zawahiri shows the group is not active inside the country.
What I see as an expert, there isn't anybody, even al-Qaeda themselves, they make it clear on the last message of Ayman al-Zawahiri, call people there, fight, stand for yourself, don't wait for anybody. If al-Qaeda is there, they will do operations. They don't call people fight, because al-Qaeda, their own actions, reach people before their own sayings. I mean, they do operations, and they came out and said, we did it.
Local people say the Syrian army have increased their patrols in recent days, but when you come to this border, it's marked here by the river, you see how easy it is to cross and how difficult it is to control. There are countless smuggling routes that have been used here for decades on a long and extremely porous frontier. One expert says he has no doubt Islamist groups are among those infiltrating Syrian territory.
There are many ships from Libya, from the Gulf, from, of course, Lebanon. Iraq provides a lot of members of Qaeda. So they are in maybe 4,000 or 5,000, and this is not something to sniff at.
He says as the Syrian uprising becomes more militarized and continues to divide on sectarian lines, yet more Islamist fighters from abroad are likely to make their way to Syria, as they did in the past in both Iraq and Afghanistan. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Northern Lebanon.
Nearly a year now since Libyan rebels joined the fight to help oust Muammar Gaddafi from power. And many of the men who joined the uprising have still not handed in their weapons. Now a leading human rights organization says armed groups are out of control in the country. This is Amnesty International, even going so far as to say the groups are guilty of war crimes. And it also believes the interim government's not doing enough to control the people who brought them to power. Well, the reports documented cases of people being beaten and tortured, often so badly it leads to death. Amnesty also says whole communities have been displaced, with thousands fleeing their homes. And its researchers say there are thousands of cases of unlawful detention as well. Many of those being held are controlled by armed gangs, over whom the government has little authority. The kind of treatment we've been hearing about was almost routine, actually, during the rule of Muammar Gaddafi. Among the worst cases, a massacre at Abu Salim prison 16 years ago, one of the catalysts for Libya's uprising. Tony Bertley went to Tripoli to meet some of those who used to be held in the prison.
It's now a used car lot in a Tripoli suburb, but until a few months ago this was Libya's most notorious prison. Abu Salim housed those who Muammar Gaddafi deemed a threat. Over the years, thousands were killed and tortured here. Imprisonment often meant a one-way journey. That was meant to be the fate for Abdul Hafid, a lawyer from Misrata. He was arrested for being an alleged American agent, and he was due to hang. He was rescued by opposition forces 6 days before the planned execution.
We were extremely scared in the beginning, but we had belief in God and shared the Quran, and even though we were in the hands of Gaddafi, God kept us strong.
They exchanged messages and parts of the Quran on tin foil lids of meal, water and food like this when the guards were away. 3 or 4 men were crammed into the death row cells that measure less than 2 square meters. Surprisingly, despite the beatings and the torture, Abdul harbors no thoughts of revenge.
I have no need for revenge. I even visited the person who beat and tortured me. I talked to him to turn him into a new Libyan man and far away from Gaddafi's philosophy.
It was a place of unimaginable horrors. No one knows how many people were killed here. No records were kept. Bodies disappeared without trace.
There's little that's come to symbolize the brutality and the oppression of the Gaddafi regime more than this prison, and in particular the events that happened here almost 16 years ago, which produced the sparks that lit the fuse of Libya's Arab awakening.
On June the 29th, 1996, in this prison yard, 1,200 men were gunned down in 2 hours. Their bodies have never been recovered. Abu Bakr Tayyib lost 6 brothers that day, but he only learned about it 12 years later through a letter from the authorities which gave no cause of death.
These people were not in a battlefield. They were in a prison. They slaughtered them. They tortured and killed them. How can I forgive this? I won't take justice into my own hands, but the guilty will face court.
Most will never forget the terrible events which divided a country, but it's perhaps too early to predict whether Libyans can fully forgive. Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.
Just hopped up to the video briefly to put this next story in a bit of context. Vladimir Putin's latest